Hello, I'm Rhoda from church. Today we're going to look at worry. Chris and Hilary have got a story to tell us, so are you sitting comfortably? Over to them.
Poor Mr. Worry. Whatever happened, he worried about it. If it rained, he worried that his roof was going to leak. If it didn't rain, he worried that all the plants in his garden were going to die. If he went shopping, he worried that the shops would be shut when he got there. And when the shops weren't shut when he got there, he worried that he was spending too much money shopping. And when he got home with the shopping, he worried that he'd left something behind, or that something had fallen out of his basket on the way home. And when he got home and discovered that he hadn't left anything behind, and that nothing had fallen out of his basket on the way home, he worried that he'd bought too much. And then he worried about where to put it all. Life was just one long worry for poor Mr. Worry. One day he went for a walk. He was worried that he might walk too far and not be able to get home. But on the other hand, he was worried that if he didn't walk far enough, he wouldn't get enough exercise. He hurried along worrying. Or you could say, he worried along hurrying. He met Mr. Bump. "Oh, I'm very worried about you," he said.
"Why's that?"
asked Mr. Bump. "I'm worried that one of these days you might hurt yourself," he said.
"Don't you worry your head about that,"
replied Mr. Bump, and went off, tripping over his own feet. Mr. Worry went on. He met Mr. Noisy. "Oh, I'm very worried about you," he said.
"Why's that?"
asked Mr. Noisy. "I'm worried that you might lose your voice," said Mr. Worry.
"Don't you worry your head about that,"
said Mr. Noisy, and went off.
Clump, 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 clump.
Mr. Worry went on. He met Mr. Greedy. "I'm very worried about you," he said.
"Why's that?"
asked Mr. Greedy. "I'm worried that you might eat too much and be sick," explained Mr. Worry.
"Me?
replied Mr. Greedy.
Eat too much? Impossible."
And went off for lunch. Mr. Worry went on. He met a wizard.
"Hello,"
said the wizard.
"Who are you?"
"I'm Mr. Worry,"
"And you look it."
commented the wizard.
"Tell you what,"
He went on, for he was a helpful sort of wizard.
"why don't you go home and write down every single thing that you're worried about? And I'll make sure none of it ever happens."
He smiled.
"And then you won't have to have anything to worry about, will you?"
Mr. Worry smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled in a long time. In fact, It was the first time he'd smiled that year. He hurried home in great excitement. When he got home, he sat down to write out all the things that worried him. Every single thing. It was a long list. And then he went to bed and had the best night's sleep he'd had in years. The following morning, the wizard came round to collect Mr. Worry's list.
My goodness me!
He said when he saw the size of it.
However,
He said,
leave it with me. I'll go off and make sure none of these things ever happens.
and off he went.
Nothing to worry about.
He called over his shoulder.
Nothing at all.
Mr. Worry heaved a sigh of relief. That day was the first day in Mr. Worry's life that he didn't have a single thing to worry about. And the next day, and the day after, and the day after that, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, Mr. Worry didn't have a care in the world. But on Monday morning, he was a worried man. Oh dear. What do you think was worrying him? Can you guess? He went to see the wizard.
Oh dear,
Said the wizard when he saw him standing on his doorstep.
what's worrying you?
I'll tell you, said Mr. Worry. I'm worried because I don't have anything to worry about. And went home to worry about not having anything to worry about.
Thank you for that story, Chris and Hilary. Poor Mr. Worry. He worries about everything, even having nothing to worry about. Would it actually help if there was a real life wizard, like in the Mr. Worry story, who could promise that everything we were worried about would never happen? I think life's a bit more complicated than that. What you wish might never happen might actually be the opposite of what I wish would never happen. So it might be impossible. I wonder if there's something different we could do about worry. Jesus knew that humans were good at worrying, and he had something to say about it. Let's hear Jesus' words as recorded by Luke in his Gospel. Over to you, Chris.
A reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12. Then, turning to his disciples, Jesus said, "That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear. For life is more than food, and your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a simple thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautiful as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have such little faith? And don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs.
Jesus was saying that we shouldn't worry. He was arguing that worry by itself doesn't actually achieve anything. I think Jesus wanted people to see the bigger picture. Even when there's plenty to worry about, Jesus encouraged people to live as those who have no worries. And he used plants and birds as an example. Plants and birds just get on living. They don't have the ability to worry. We need to try and live in the present, in the now. There isn't much point in wasting life now by worrying about something that may or may not happen tomorrow. Jesus talked about concentrating on God's kingdom. Christians believe that God's kingdom is about love and generosity and caring and sharing. It's about looking out for others. If we look for the good things that are happening and join in with those, then we'll have less time to worry. At this harvest time, we give thanks for all those who are involved in growing and producing our food, and we give thanks to God for creating and sustaining our world. We recognise that there's more to life than food and clothes and worrying about them. And if we're one of the fortunate ones with food to spare, then we can share what we have with those who haven't got enough. So let's end by talking to God as we say a prayer. Father God, help us to give you all the things that worry us. As we thank you for the harvest, may we cherish and respect this planet and its peoples. Amen. Goodbye until next time.